we're going to do that by going through this Beato Fantano square off. Oh, it's a hardcore square off.
May not know
Boomer versus millennial. Here we go.
who you are. The needle drop. Can you tell people what the difference is between the two channels?
Yeah, I mean, I have both those channels. I have the Twitch page as well. I'm all over the place. I'm spreading like a disease.
You are all over the place. And I follow you on multiple platforms.
Yeah, we're TikTok
Good for you.
mutuals as well, I believe too. So
Yes.
we're everywhere together. But yeah, the Needle Drop channel is mostly music reviews. On the streaming platforms, we usually do kind of like live reactions to stuff when it comes out on New Music Fridays, especially. On the Fantano channel, we usually just kind of like do a lot of side music industry commentary and just talk about more general music discourse and, you know, commentary that may be happening in the music sphere broadly. But that's basically kind of the separation between the two. I mean, it's
I have not seen any of this. This is all a live reaction.
super
Just thought I'd clean that up.
bold line separating both of them. But, you know, it's a lot of content coming out every week.
All right, get to it, boys.
Well, everything that you do is fair use. Any type of album critique is for sure fair use. No question about it.
So it is.
I testified in a congressional hearing back in 2021, maybe something like that. One of the hearings Don Henley was in. I didn't happen to be in the same hearing, but it was a hearing on fair use, and they've not done anything about the law. I testified on.
Oh my God, this is kind of boring.
I'm not coming on here to sort of like make a bold stance and say all uses of AI and sort of like a, you know, creative context are wrong or bad or sort of like, you know, inherently result in bad art or whatever's like, you know, just bad entertainment. I mean, you know, I was one of many who last year thought that like Metro Boomin BBL Drizzy song was really funny. You know, but the thing about that track is that it samples this sound, this instrumental that sounds like, you know, sort of like an old 60s or soul chop, you know, that you would get in a hip hop beat. But the thing is, like, it's a fake song in that style generated by AI where the lyricist is singing about Drake having a Brazilian butt lift. You know, it's a total anachronism. That could never exist.
That's
You know,
cool. I
there's
like
no
that.
soul band in the 70s
That's hilarious.
singing about that.
That's
you
funny.
know?
I like
But
that.
the thing is, like, he sampled that and he turned it into an actual beat, and
Cool.
you know, people loved it. It was very entertaining. There's a recent JPEG Mafia album, this rapper producer who I'm a fan of. You know, it was kind of an example of a similar thing. He has this song where, you know, he's rapping on it. He produced the instrumental himself, but a part of the instrumental is a sample of what sounds like, again, a song from like the soul era, you know, that classic kind of soul single vinyl crackle feel, but it's an AI generated song. You know, there's tons.
I understand that to generate this art, somewhere between machine learning and full-on AI, I suppose. I understand that it takes a lot of water to generate such things, and that therefore is bad for the environment. I understand that argument, but for pure artistic expression and adventure and like the possibilities of what you can do with that from an artistic perspective, taking the monetary and economic aspect out of it completely, I'm for it.
Of these fake soul songs all over YouTube that sound like they're something from that era, but they're not. They're an AI figment of your imagination. There were a lot of fans who were very disappointed by that because, you know, as much as Kanye can be pretty controversial, his fans do actually want to hear his actual voice, you know, coming out of his mouth. And, you know, they were kind of shocked and disappointed to sort of like see that, you know, and I think in cases like that, it can feel.
Yeah, that's abusive. That's Kanye being an abusive POS. But it's the soul of the man. It's the soul of the man that's dark, not necessarily the technology itself. It's like, yes, it could be wielded as a weapon of destruction and darkness, but that doesn't mean it is a weapon of destruction and darkness.
There's a sort of disillusionment there, and there's
alchemy,
you know, a sadness that I think kind of creeps in when it's like, oh, the voice that I'm hearing of this person who I'm, you know, supposedly a fan of, who I think, you know, makes great art, the person who I'm hearing may not even be them. It may just be a person using some kind of AI sort of like, you know, vocal manipulation software to make it sound like they are this person who I'm a fan of.
I was having lunch.
That's cool. I see the AI filters as a newer version of plugins. You know, I mean, you put auto tune on your voice, you put this on your voice, you put different sauces on your voice. And to me, filtering your voice through whoever the fuck. And by the way, these AI Vocaloids, whatever you want to call them, it's not like they sound exactly like the artist. They're kind of funny and goofy in that way, which is what creates room for fun and playfulness with the technology, where it's like, you're not trying to rip someone off. You're just using plugins in the same way that you're using like a vocal pitch bender, format shifter vibe, right? I mean, I just see it as like a new iteration or addition or a more granular potential for expression than we've ever seen before. I don't know. Like I said, it could be used as a weapon for good or bad. The filters, so to speak, the plugins in which we're talking about here, in and of themselves are not evil or bad. Now you could argue, well, yeah, but you're modeling these AI filters after real human being artists, and they haven't given you permission to do the thing. I don't know. I kind of have a radical collectivist opinion, I guess, on this, where it's like, I try to put myself in the position of, if I'm big enough or whatever, like culturally relevant enough that people want to rip off my voice, kind of feels like an honor. At that point, you're so part of the fabric of like the collective unconscious, collective conscious, whatever you want to call it, part of like the fabric of musical culture that we all consume or don't consume, but that's available to us. First of all, I want to say it's the wild, wild west, and I'm not an advocate for that aspect of it. I do think there should be laws and regulations around it. Whatever kind of legislation comes forward around that, I'll probably be supportive of it. But, you know, if you use like a Donald Fagen from Steely Dan vocal filter, which is what I think of it as, and you put your voice through it, when they listen to it, no one's going to think, oh, is this a Donald Fagen record? They're going to think, oh, that's wacky. Especially if you let people know that you're using a Donald Fagen filter. Or I don't think people hear it as Donald Fagen. They hear it as like this weird, like, what is that? It sounds familiar-ish, but it's not anyone, which is kind of the point of AI technology, which is why I guess I have more, I don't know, I guess it's radical leftist view. I don't even know how I would prescribe or describe the quality, the ideology behind my views on this. But anyway, it's interesting stuff to think about nonetheless.
And he said, well, having 15 writers is basically AI. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah.
That's a really good point, because the whole point of 15 writers is to make the product homogenous enough that it's marketable enough to a broad spectrum of consumers. And so, yeah, what's the difference between that and fucking typing into a program like, hey, I want something to sound like a 70s soul vibe with the vinyl crackle, but I want it to be about Drake's BPL.
Jumble them up. That's kind of what AI is. So you can do it a lot faster.
Yeah, there's a homogeneity to it. Homogeneity, that's the word, to it. I don't know. That's kind of just back to my main thesis here. I just feel like, at least where we are now, these AI models that we're using as vocal filters, for example, it doesn't sound like the people it's emulating. It's emulating like archetypes, right? Which is kind of what Beato's getting at. When you have 15 songwriters for a Beyonce or Coldplay track or whatever, it's as if you're making a capitalist product.
I guess at the end of the day, as long as it comes out with something people want to hear,
yes,
I feel like there is an argument to be made on behalf of that process. However, the real issue, the real problem is that the 15 artists, songs, creators, writers, whoever's work that AI model gets trained on, they're pretty much at this point are little to no rules, regulations, expectations in terms of those people being paid. So, 15 different people who made 15 different records could have their album right now, and there are many more than that in actuality. And my hypothetical is not a hypothetical; it's real. You could have those 15 different records and 15 different creators, all having their albums being trained by this AI model that's being trained on them, right. And it's essentially spitting out music that's copying that stuff. But those people are not being paid; their work is not being acknowledged. They're not getting any credit. Some of these platforms you were mentioning earlier have literally spat out songs where, a vocal is on top of it and it sounds like Future. It's literally like Drake's voice. Yeah. It's literally like, the voice of some other very popular artist with tens of millions of listeners on Spotify. And then afterwards they're like, oh, whoops. We didn't know it was going to do that. We thought.
But are you releasing it as future? Because if you are, then yes, it's disingenuous and you're being a bad. I don't know. If you're releasing it as you, then it's art.
But it might come out with some kind of amalgamation of like 4 or 5 different vocals from different places, but yet no, it just came out with a vocal that sounds exactly like this specific platinum selling artist's voice.
Oops.
So again, you know, these people's work, it's being copied and it's being rehashed by these programs, and they're getting no credit for it. They're getting no acknowledgement. And if
that's weird for sure. There's different levels and layers to the ethics of this for sure.
Okay, every single time your work is incorporated by our software, you get this amount of money, or you get this cut, or you get that. I mean, that would be one thing. There'd be, I feel like, you know, a fairness there about that, even if we don't like the direction this is going in artistically. That's still money going in artists' pockets, and as long as that flow is continuing, there's still at least an incentive to create. But if you cut off that money and there's like no exchange there as a result of that,
if you're taking money out of artists' pockets and instead you're putting it into AI artists, okay, then that's fucked up, right? That's like at the top of the pyramid of evil Porco Diablo destruction at the highest degree of this technology, how it interacts with us on a societal level, on a macro
replacing
level.
artists and just telling them to fuck off, you know, and just saying, well, we've replaced you, we've come up with essentially what you do, so you can just go away now.
My vibe is that people are going to listen to things that they like. They don't care whether it's AI created or not. And
oh yeah, they don't. They don't care at all.
You know, the way that people used to get around using samples, the whole idea of interpolation was that they just do a re-record of it. And doing re-records of something that's AI generated, okay, so you create it with AI and then you just replay all the parts, you know, recreate it in your own way. And I'm sure that there's some of that going on right now on records that are already out. And maybe that some of the AI created music actually improves what people do. You know, essentially you're competing against, well, whatever these models are trained upon, but you assume it's training it on all the possible combinations of chord progressions, melodies, beats, bass lines, sounds, things like that. So trying to come up with something that is really fresh might push songwriters and producers into going that extra step to try to create things that haven't been heard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think creativity, generally speaking, is going anywhere. And as long as
I agree with
technology
that. That's my point.
To
that's kind. I
grow
feel like
and gain influence,
that's where we all
like,
are all meeting
no
here in the middle.
Even I myself am going to find myself in a position where like I'm enjoying something that has been aided or influenced or impacted by AI on some level. But, you know, with that being said, and I know you've sort of like spoken to, you know, these trends in videos that you've done as well. I don't know if this stuff is wholly being embraced because of just like how helpful or how ingenious or, you know, how profoundly great it is. I think it's being embraced because for one, of convenience, and I feel like we're in an age where artists have to sort of like take advantage of every convenience that they can because they don't know whether or not a record that they're working on is going to be successful. I feel like the older model of doing things, which, you know, you very much decried the death of on videos that you've done. I feel like a lot of artists would like to go back to that, you know, but the thing is like, there's such a huge risk and potentially no money in like, hey, let's book a session. Let's book a session. Let's get 8 people in here. Let's spend weeks on this. You know, let's spend this amount of time on this. Let's do the, you know, let's get ambitious. Let's do this. Let's do that. You know, the only artists who I know who really sort of like embark on, you know, that level of grandiosity are the ones who already have like tens of millions of followers and listeners and so on and so forth. And, you know, with the way Spotify is currently going, and we haven't even really kind of addressed this part of it yet, through their algorithms, and as I'm sure you maybe have discussed at some point recently, the way that they've sort of like done that cutoff where, oh yeah, if your song doesn't have this amount of streams within a year, you get no money. You know?
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's saved them millions and millions of dollars. You know,
Right.
I mean, for an individual artist, everybody may be sort of like looking at it and be like, so what? That's like that's a couple of pennies, da 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 da. But overall, that's that adds up to millions of dollars for Spotify.
True.
So they're saving themselves tons of money. And I think slowly what they're doing, and I think these rates will probably increase down the road in terms of like what the cutoff is. And I think Spotify and between that and their algorithms are going to just kind of like find more ways to essentially just say F you
to be more
independent
authoritarian
artists, and find a way to just kind of like further streamline and pipeline their platform and everything that it does toward, you know, records owned by and supported by the majors, you know, cut out more independent artists who aren't necessarily proving to be cash cows on the Spotify platform, and just kind of, you know, widen that monetary gap between the most successful and the most obscure among the artist community. And I feel like it's going to put artists in general, not general, but...
All right, we're in a much more interesting part of the conversation. I feel like the first 10 minutes of this was like boring talk about DMC, potential violations, kind of a snore fest. This part of it is way more interesting. I like where this is going. I'm a fan now.
Genuine music fans in a position where like, okay, I go on this platform that's allegedly the biggest for music and the best for music, and I go on here and all I hear is just like the most generic mainstream crap that you could possibly imagine that has, you know, no soul or artistry to it. It's just sort of like wash, rinse, repeat everything. You know, maybe it all becomes AI at that point. Who the hell knows?
Right.
I want to hear an actual song made by an actual person. Where am I going to go for that? You know, there's going to need to be an alternative. I don't know what that will be, or if there are some platforms out there that could sort of like serve as that in lieu of Spotify, but I potentially see things ending up in a place where people want to hear an actual musician express something genuine and create a real piece of art that comes from their heart. They're going to need to go somewhere else for that, because Spotify is going to either make it difficult to find that sort of thing on their platform.
That's a really good point.
Make it difficult to find it,
I'm
hear it,
right with
Fantano
on this.
For a different sort of actual sort of like, you know, genuine artistic experience. I think a lot of music fans and musicians may find themselves having to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think I was reading recently is that Spotify's talking about having a three-tiered system where...
Oh, a caste system.
Yeah, I feel like that's a part of the eventual process of it's, again, squeezing out smaller artists. You know, the fact that they're constantly tearing it out now. It's like an artistic caste system.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's essentially what they're doing.
When I do these...
Who called that one? Outie.
Spotify top 10 countdowns. I do one every 4 months, just so people on my channel, because I have a lot of non-music people that follow my channel. And I do it because that's usually when there's a turnover of all the songs are different. It takes about 4 months for everything to play out that's in the top 10. And invariably people will write in the comments section. I mean, I don't go through the comments except in the first like 10 minutes or so to see if there's a dropout in the audio or something like that. But people will say, I don't believe these are the top songs in the top 10. That's not true.
My neck.
And I think to myself, it's like, well, why wouldn't these be the most played songs?
I understand why people feel that way, and I'll try to explain. I'll tell anybody wondering that exactly why that is right now. Okay, it used to be, if your context for what popular music is, and this is very much my context, if your context for what popular music is like any major hit that you could possibly name in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever, like the reason that we all had this kind of like monoculture type understanding of like, you know, what the hits of the day are.
Correct.
It's Thriller. It's Hit Me Baby One More Time. It's, you know, Smells Like Teen Spirit, is because this was music that was either created with the intention of, or, you know, was kind of like groomed through the industry in order to hit in a way to where it just had a super broad appeal among as many people as possible. This
is the point I was just
because if you were going to make money in music, that's how you made money. A lot of people that look at these lists and they're like, I don't know who the fuck half these people are.
Right.
And you know, it's like, I'm sure some people
That's how I feel all the time about that, about those kind of lists.
Look at that and they're like, am I old or something?
Yes,
and it's like,
I
no,
feel yes. The answer is yes.
There's a lot of young people that don't even know who these people are. But the thing
That's
is,
true too. There's different artists, different demographics, different micro and ecosystem spaces, different micro niche genres where those particular artists are big to those followings, which could be up to 2 million people.
that the reason they're
be 5,
hitting
could
and
be
the
10,
reason they're
could be 15, could
successful
be
is
20.
not, again, it's not because they're appealing to as many people as possible. It's because, look at Taylor Swift. It's like that record was one of the biggest albums of the year, the Tortured Poets Department. But there are tons of people who haven't even heard a single song off that album.
Yeah.
And it's all because, and they don't need to. They don't need to. The reason it's successful is because the Swifties are the ones that are listening to that album over and over and over and over. And she did the right thing by dropping a deluxe that's an entire other album of material. She just gave them more of what they're going to do. Don't give them one album that they're going to listen to 5 times. Give them 2 albums they're going to listen to 5, 10, 30 times and go over every single lyric and so on and so forth, in the way that they do. So that's the way you generate success in today's day and age. And, look, there's definitely artists out there.
Taylor Swift is the closest thing we have to a monoculture in music now in 2025.
Who are still making music
as is
for,
Beyonce.
Broad appeal. I mean, I think like Chappell Roan, for example, is a bit of an anomaly in the pop sphere these days, in that I feel like she makes music that appeals to a lot of different types of music fans and different generations of music fans, without necessarily intending to do so, mind you. But it just sort of happened to, I think, kind of turn out that way organically. But make no mistake, her music is also, very endlessly replayable, and is also sort of like succeeding within that model as well. But the model these days is not about appealing to as many people broadly and even globally as you possibly can, like in the days of Michael Jackson. Right now it's about, can you get this kind of hardcore niche group of people to listen to this one thing as many times as possible, endlessly, almost.
Yeah.
That's really the way to sort of like, pop these records off and make money these days.
I was listening to Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder, yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, would any of those songs, Sir Duke, My Sherry Amore, I Wish, any of those songs be hits today? I mean, could Stevie Wonder break through?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think the short answer is no, just
Really?
based off of the fact that, like, current trends and aesthetics don't match what those songs are.
Yeah, but what about Silk Sonic? They're huge. I feel like, Silk Sonic, of course, has the modern glossy production of this decade. So it's kind of an unfair thing to say. It's kind of, you would have to assume that Songs in the Key of Life would have to be updated with that modern sheen to sell it to a modern audience, I guess.
Yeah, if you get what
It's
I'm
a weird
saying.
hypothetical.
But simultaneously, I would also like to think, like, if somebody on Stevie's level of talent and ability were you to plop him in the music industry today and just sort of be like, okay, go, figure it out. I would like to think, as long as, like,
I just said Silk Sonic. You can extrapolate from that Anderson .Paak. I'm not saying I like Anderson .Paak's music as much as I do Stevie Wonder's, but he is of that ilk. He is of that level of talent. He plays all the instruments. He produces, he sings, he writes. He's a very much a modern analogy to Stevie Wonder.
I think you're great, man, and I appreciate everything you do. So I appreciate you hanging out with me today.
Yeah, well, that's why I've had you on my channel too. I think you do cool stuff. I think you bring a perspective that people need to be, like, reminded of. I think you have an experience and a knowledge base that, like,
I think these two guys add value to the music community, YouTube music community at large. And you know what? Rick Beato's daddy, and I have a joint rolled for the next segment. So it's good timing.